It was the first chilly Monday of October when Lily boarded the school bus for the very first time. Her presence was so quiet, so barely there, that a few students didn't even notice someone new had joined them. She stepped on wearing an oversized, brown coat, her tiny hands clutching the frayed straps of a backpack that looked nearly empty. Her hair was matted in places, and there was something about her pale face that made Mr. Harris do a double-take. But before he could greet her, she had already taken a seat, third row from the back, by the window. Lily didn't speak that morning. In fact, she didn't make a sound. She simply stared out the window, her eyes following the treetops like she was searching for something just beyond them. Other children laughed and swapped stories around her, but she remained still, as if none of it existed. It wasn't just that she was shy, felt like she was disconnected. Like she was halfway between being there and being somewhere else. Mr. Harris had driven hundreds of kids over the years, but Lily's stillness was different. It wasn't nervousness. It was something colder. The next day she was there again, standing in the same spot by the roadside, no parent, no sibling, no one else in sight, just Lily, in that same coat, her boots soaked from the morning dew. She boarded without a word and made her way to the exact same seat. The routine repeated daily, almost ritualistically. No lunchbox, no friends, no change in clothes. It was as if she lived in a loop, and the school bus was the only part of her life that ever moved forward. And yet, every time she boarded, she cast a nervous glance over her shoulder. Not at the house behind her, but at the woods beyond it. The farmhouse she came from sat at the end of a dirt path, barely visible through the thick trees. Its shutters were crooked, paint peeling, the roof caving in near the chimney. Mr. Harris remembered passing by it for years and never seeing a single light on. He hadn't known anyone lived there until Lily appeared. There was something strange about that, something that lingered in the back of his mind. What kind of family lets a girl that young walk to the road alone, every single day, without once waving her off? As the days passed, Mr. Harris began to watch Lily more closely, not out of suspicion, but out of a quiet, growing concern. Her shoulders were always slumped, her face always hidden behind that curtain of tangled hair. The only movement she made was the occasional tremble, as if she were cold or scared. Once, he swore he saw her mouth the words "Don't follow me" as she stepped off the bus. He wasn't sure if she was talking to him, or someone else. By the end of the first week, Mr. Harris couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had seen hundreds of kids in his 2 decades as a school bus driver, shy kids, talkative kids, even ones who cried on their first day. But Lily was different. Her sadness didn't seem temporary or situational, it felt permanent. She didn't cry in the noisy, attention-seeking way children sometimes do. Instead, her tears came without sound, without movement. Just slow streams that ran down her cheeks as she stared blankly at the landscape passing outside the window. At first he tried to convince himself it was just adjustment. Maybe she was new to town. Maybe she missed old friends. But this wasn't homesickness. It was haunting. Every afternoon on the way home, just as the bus neared her drop-off point, Lily's expression would subtly change. Her breathing became shallow, her fingers gripped the seat in front of her. Her lips would quiver as though she was silently reciting something, maybe a prayer. By the time the bus pulled up near that dilapidated old house, her eyes would already be full of tears. And every time, without fail, she'd wipe them quickly before standing up. As if afraid someone might notice, Mr. Harris finally tried speaking to her one day. As the other kids disembarked, he gently called out, "Lily, everything okay, sweetheart?" She froze mid-step, not turning back. He waited, thinking she hadn't heard, but then she nodded just once, barely perceptibly, and stepped off without a word. It was the kind of nod someone gives not to confirm the truth, but to stop someone from asking more questions. That moment sent a chill through him. There was something unspoken between them now. Something thick and cold in the air. Every time she boarded over the next few days, he began to pay attention to the details. Her shoes were always damp, even when the roads were dry. Her backpack seemed unusually light, as if there was nothing in it at all. Once, a gust of wind blew her coat open as she climbed the bus stairs, and Mr. Harris caught a glimpse of her arm. There were faint marks, almost like scratches, fading across her skin. He opened his mouth to say something, but her eyes met his in that instant, and he stopped. They weren't angry or frightened. They were pleading. "Don't ask. Please." Mr. Harris started to dread the final stop of the day. The woods near her house seemed darker than anywhere else, even in the daylight. Sometimes he swore he saw movement. Between the trees, a flash of black. the sway of a branch with no wind, but every time he looked again, there was nothing there. The house never had a light on, never showed signs of life. And yet Lily always walked directly toward it without hesitation. Something about the way she moved, like she didn't want to go, but had no other choice, made him feel helpless. And slowly, silently, the unease began to settle in his chest like a heavy stone. Every morning, Lily boarded the bus at exactly 7:03 a.m., as if she had memorized the schedule to the second. She never missed a day, never arrived early or late. But what unsettled Mr. Harris wasn't just her punctuality, was the complete lack of human interaction in her world. There was never anyone with her at the stop. No parent, no neighbor, not even a stray dog wandering nearby. She emerged from the mist like a ghost, her footsteps muffled by damp leaves, her face expressionless except for the subtle puffiness under her eyes. Mr. Harris began trying different ways to reach her. He made friendly comments, asked simple questions like how was school? Or do you like art class? Things that wouldn't seem threatening. But Lily never answered. Not once. She didn't even shake her head. It was as if his words floated right through her, unheard and unacknowledged. And yet, he knew she was listening. Occasionally, her eyes would flicker just briefly in his direction when he spoke. Her silence wasn't ignorance. It was choice. And that was what made it feel so eerie. The other children had begun to notice, too. They weren't cruel, but they were kids, and kids are curious. A few whispered about her during the ride. She smells weird. Her hair looks like she never showers. Why doesn't she talk? But Lily never reacted, not even when a boy tossed a crumpled gum wrapper at her once. It landed in her lap. She didn't move to brush it off. She just stared out the window, tears quietly streaking down her cheek, as though she didn't even know she was crying. As if she had been crying for so long, it had become part of her. One day, something strange happened. As Mr. Harris watched her in the rear-view mirror, he noticed Lily whispering. Her lips were moving, just barely. There was no sound, but the movement was steady, like she was chanting something under her breath. He leaned ever so slightly toward the mirror, trying to read her lips. It wasn't English. It wasn't anything familiar. Just a string of soft syllables that sounded rehearsed, almost ritualistic. Then she stopped abruptly, turned her face to the glass window, and drew a tiny symbol with her finger in the condensation, a symbol that made Mr. Harris's stomach twist. He didn't recognize it, but something about it felt ancient. That same afternoon, after the children had been dropped off, Mr. Harris walked to Lily's seat. It was empty, of course, but there was a faint warmth on the cushion, like someone had just stood up seconds before. He knelt down to pick up a pencil that had rolled beneath the seat, and his hand brushed against something rough. There was tape stuck to the underside of the seat frame, thin, clear tape holding a small, folded piece of paper. He hesitated, glancing around the now empty bus, heart suddenly racing. He didn't open the note. Not yet, but in that moment, he knew something without needing proof. Lily wasn't just sad, she was hiding something. And someone or something might be watching her. As Lily's silence persisted and her strange behavior became more noticeable, whispers began to spread among the students like wildfire. Kids are naturally imaginative, but in this case, the stories had a chilling consistency. It wasn't just that Lily was weird, it was where she lived. Several students swore they'd seen the old farmhouse from the bus window, and each recounted something different. Some said they saw candlelight flickering in the attic at night. Others claimed they'd seen a shadow moving from room to room, even though the curtains were always drawn tight. The scariest rumor came from a boy named Travis, who sat near the back. He claimed the house had been abandoned for years. Travis insisted that nobody lived there anymore, not since the last family disappeared. According to him, the farmer who once owned the property vanished without a trace, nearly a decade ago. His wife had supposedly gone mad in the weeks following his disappearance, and neighbors said she wandered into the woods one night and never returned. No bodies were found, and eventually, the house was deemed uninhabitable. But now, somehow, Lily was walking out of that same front door every morning, as if none of that had ever happened. Mr. Harris initially dismissed the story as schoolyard exaggeration until he looked up the property records himself and found something deeply unsettling. The farmhouse had no listed current residents. More strange stories began to surface. A group of kids claimed they saw someone watching from an upstairs window as the bus drove by, but when they pointed it out to Mr. Harris, there was nothing there. Another student said her older brother, who worked for a local tree removal crew, refused to work near the farmhouse after spotting a tall figure standing perfectly still in the woods behind it. When he tried to take a picture, his phone glitched and restarted on its own. It was all too strange to ignore, and even the braver kids began shifting away from Lily's seat, leaving a wide circle of empty space around her each morning. What troubled Mr. Harris the most was the growing sense that Lily knew about these whispers. She never responded to them, but her eyes would lower slightly when the giggling started. She didn't flinch, didn't cry in front of the others, but when she thought no one was watching, she would trace that same strange symbol into the fogged-up window beside her. At first, Mr. Harris assumed it was just a nervous habit. But, as he searched online late into the night, trying to find the origin of that symbol, he realized it didn't match anything modern. It wasn't just a doodle. It resembled something ritualistic, perhaps even protective. The line between rumor and reality blurred more each day. Mr. Harris found himself double-checking the bus cameras, only to find sections of footage corrupted, but only during Lily's ride. Static freezes once. The camera went completely black for a full 8 minutes, only to flicker back on just as Lily was stepping off the bus. It felt impossible, almost paranormal. Was it a coincidence? Or were the kids right? Was there something that house besides Lily? If so, why was she the only one ever seen coming or going? It was a Wednesday afternoon when something finally broke the routine. The sky had turned the color of lead, and a cold wind howled through the trees as Mr. Harris pulled up near Lily's usual stop. Raindrops spattered the bus windows, creating a murky blur of forest, fence posts, and overgrown weeds. The other children had already been dropped off, and the bus was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and the hiss of rain. Lily stood up as always, clutching her backpack and making her way slowly down the aisle. But this time, she seemed distracted. Her eyes kept darting toward the woods instead of the farmhouse. She stepped off the bus without a word, vanishing into the misty path as if swallowed by it. Mr. Harris waited an extra beat, watching her walk, when he noticed something on her seat, a small bundle, half tucked between the cushion and the wall. He turned and realized it was her backpack. She had left it behind, something she had never done in all the weeks she'd been riding. At first, he thought to call out to her, maybe even step out and hand it to her. But something he couldn't explain what held him in place. That same cold, heavy feeling pressed against his chest again. He slowly rose from his seat and walked toward the back of the bus, picking up the bag. The backpack was surprisingly light, too light. He unzipped the top slowly, almost expecting to find it empty. But inside, there were only a few strange items. A small, folded blanket that smelled faintly of mildew. A faded photograph of a woman whose eyes had been scratched out with pen, and a sealed envelope with no name, no address, just a single word written in jagged red ink. Stay. He stared at it for several seconds, a chill crawling up the back of his neck. This wasn't the school bag of a child who lived a normal life. It was more like a survival kit. Or a warning. As he held the bag, he glanced toward Lily's seat again. Something had shifted. There's something subtle, but wrong. The space beneath the seat was darker than it should have been, like a shadow that didn't belong. Curiosity, or perhaps something closer to dread, drew him to his knees. As he reached beneath the seat to retrieve a pencil he thought he saw, his fingers brushed something unexpected. Paper. Not notebook paper, but old, brittle, and folded. He carefully pulled it out. It was a torn page from a journal, stained with smudges and reddish-brown marks that looked almost dried. The handwriting was frantic, nearly illegible, but one sentence at the top stood out. She's not alone on the bus. Mr. Harris froze. The air inside the vehicle suddenly felt heavier, like something was watching him waiting. He stuffed the page into his coat pocket and zipped the backpack closed. Back in his seat, he gripped the steering wheel tightly and stared out through the rain, trying to shake the sensation that he had just crossed an invisible boundary. One he couldn't return from. Lily was still somewhere in that fog. But now, her silence had a voice, and it was whispering louder than ever. That night, Mr. Harris couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the sentence from the torn journal page in his mind. She's not alone on the bus. What did it mean? A metaphor? A warning? Or was it literal? He sat at his kitchen table, long past midnight, staring at the faded photo from Lily's backpack. The woman in it looked vaguely familiar, perhaps an older version of Lily herself, but the black scratches over her eyes gave the image a violent energy. He hadn't opened the envelope yet. A part of him was afraid of what it might contain. Another part wasn't sure it was even meant for him. The next morning, Mr. Harris arrived at the depot an hour early, before any of the other drivers showed up. He unlocked the bus and stepped inside. It was quiet, too quiet, and for a moment, he felt foolish, like an old man letting ghost stories get into his head. But as he made his way toward the back, the weight returned in his chest. That creeping, crawling awareness that he wasn't alone. He crouched down by Lily's seat again, flashlight in hand this time, determined to see what else might be hidden. His breath caught when the light caught something metallic wedged under the seat rail. It was a small key, rusted, almost black, tied to a string. He picked it up gently, noticing how cold it felt despite the warmth of the bus. Right next to it, wedged deep into the narrow crack between the floor and the seat post, was another folded paper. This one was crumpled, water-stained, but still intact. As he unfolded it, he found a series of childlike sketches. They were drawn in charcoal or dark pencil, jagged, urgent lines showing what looked like the inside of a bus. His bus, row by row of seats, all filled with blank stick figures. All except one in the back. That figure had hollow eyes and blackened limbs that extended to far past the knees. The figure was labeled in blocky handwriting, "It watches." A cold shiver crawled up Mr. Harris's spine. These weren't the drawings of a bored child. They were a warning. Something Lily had seen or imagined was haunting her rides home. The figure appeared again in another sketch, this time standing directly behind her seat, taller than any human, with elongated fingers that touched the windows on both sides. The last drawing showed Lily herself, stick-thin, her eyes closed. A single tear falling from one eye as the figure loomed behind her, scrawled in the corner, "Don't let it follow me." The words looked rushed, like she had scribbled them, moments before stuffing it under the seat. At that moment, a soft creak echoed through the bus. Mr. Harris turned fast, his flashlight beam darting across the empty rows. Nothing, just shadows, still and lifeless. But when he turned back to Lily's seat, something had changed. The condensation on the nearby window had fogged over slightly from his breath, and in it, clear as day, a symbol had been drawn. The same symbol Lily had traced with her finger. Only this time, he hadn't drawn it. It was fresh, wet, as if someone or something was there just moments before. The next morning, Lily didn't show up. For the first time in weeks, her seat was empty. Mr. Harris kept glancing at the roadside near the decaying fence, half expecting her to emerge from the fog like she always did. But no one came. He waited a full 5 minutes past her usual time, ignoring the irritated glances from the kids in the back, before finally pulling away with a hollow pit forming in his stomach. The ride felt different, wrong, as if the rhythm of the bus had been broken. Her absence wasn't a relief, it was unnerving. It left a kind of quiet that felt more dangerous than her silence ever had. That afternoon, Mr. Harris made a decision he'd never made in all his years of driving. After dropping off the last student, instead of heading back to the depot, he steered the bus down the narrow gravel road that led to the farmhouse. It was something he told himself he'd never do. Drivers had rules, boundaries, but he couldn't ignore the gnawing sense that something had gone terribly wrong. As the tires crunched over the loose gravel and the woods closed in tighter on either side, he gripped the wheel until his knuckles turned white. Every instinct told him to turn around. But he died in single quotes T when he reached the edge of the property. The bus came to a stop. The house looked even more desolate, up close, its windows coated in grime, the porch half collapsed, the front door hanging from a rusted hinge. But what struck him most was the silence. No birds, no wind, no sound at all. He stepped out cautiously, calling Lily's name once, twice. No response. With every hesitant step toward the porch, the boards beneath him groaned like a warning. He peeked through the nearest window and was met with total darkness inside. He couldn't see furniture, couldn't see movement. It didn't even look like anyone had lived there in years. Later that evening, driven by both fear and obligation, Mr. Harris contacted the local authorities. A patrol car arrived within an hour. They investigated the house thoroughly, and what they discovered was far more disturbing than he could imagined. The interior was coated in thick dust. Cobwebs hung like drapes. There were no signs of recent habitation, no clothes, no food, no electricity, nothing except for one thing, a cracked picture frame on the mantel with the exact same photograph Mr. Harris had found in Lily's backpack. Only in this one, the woman's face hadn't been scratched out. The officer, puzzled, asked Mr. Harris where the girl lived, what her full name was. That's when the final, most chilling detail emerged. according to official records, the farmhouse had been vacant for over 6 months. The last listed resident was a single woman named Clara Winslow, Lily's mother. She had filed a missing persons report for her daughter over 8 weeks ago. Authorities believed Clara had either left the property in grief or suffered a breakdown, but Lily, she had never enrolled at the school Mr. Harris drove to. Her name wasn't in the district system. In fact, she wasn't listed anywhere at all. Mr. Harris never saw Lily again. He continued driving that same route for the rest of the school year, always slowing down just slightly near the broken fence where she once waited. But the fog stayed empty. Her seat remained vacant, though he never let anyone else sit there. Sometimes, on colder mornings, he swore he could still see faint outlines drawn in the condensation on the glass. The same symbol she used to trace with her finger, once, late after a storm. He returned to the bus to retrieve his keys and found a single muddy footprint on the floor, right beneath her seat. The torn journal page, the drawings, the strange envelope, they were all turned over to authorities, but no answers ever came. The envelope was empty. The photograph vanished from evidence storage. And worst of all, the bus's onboard cameras glitched completely the week Lily disappeared, wiping all footage of her rides. It was as if she had never been there at all. To this day, Mr. Harris keeps her backpack in a locked drawer, not because he believes she returned for it, but because something tells him she left it behind on purpose. A message, a cry for help, a warning, and sometimes, when the road is quiet and the woods are still, he glances in the rearview mirror, swears he sees her, just for a second. Third row from the back. Sitting silently. Crying.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.